I want to welcome my colleague and wonderful Director of Children's Supports at the St. Louis ARC, Dana Walker. Dana, can you tell everybody a little bit about your role at the ARC?
My name is Dana Walker, and I am the Director of Children's Services. So right now we have 3 children's programs. The first program I'll talk about is the Parents Learning Together program. So that program is for parents living with a developmental delay or disability and have their children living in the home with them. So that program focuses on keeping those families intact. They are paired with a parent educator that does weekly home visits. Those visits usually last between 2 to 3 hours, where they're working on the parents' goals that they have set forth in the program. On Wednesdays and Fridays, there's a group component where all the parents come together for collective learning, share ideas, thoughts, and resources, and they are housed out of Delmar Divine. Our other program is Capable Kids and Families. That is a program that services kids birth to 7 that have a developmental delay or disability. They and their family are paired with a family resource specialist that does monthly home visits to help the family with any kind of community resource needs they may need. That program also has a lending library where the family can utilize specialized equipment. They can borrow it from us and utilize it with their child for as long as they need to. We also have our embedded learning model program. That program services right now the Normandy area. We're in 12 centers in Normandy, and we have embedded early learning specialists to do developmental assessments. They make action plans for kids that are developmentally delayed, and we work with the teacher one-on-one on how to support those kids in those classrooms so that those kids are kindergarten ready.
As I was thinking about getting ready for this conversation today, I was thinking, we touch families a lot of the time when there's life changes that occur that cause stress, where there's decision making that has to occur, and I bet choosing childcare is one of those first decisions that families have to make that is probably stressful for every family member. And then if you've got a child who maybe learns differently or has some specific needs that aren't typical, I bet that makes it even more challenging. Why did you want to focus on this today?
Well, yes. So picking a child care center is stressful anyway, because you're giving your child to someone to be able to look after for an extended period of time, and you're hoping that they have, the qualifications, or you're going to treat your child just as you would treat them. So when you have a child that has a disability or delay, that maybe can't speak or talk, for themselves, or is going to need extra help and support, that really also, weighs heavily on a parent in picking picking an appropriate child care center for their child. So I really think it's an important topic, because in general, not many parents know like the important questions or things to be looking or thinking about when they're picking a child care center. Some parents just, you go out of what's convenient, and, also, what's in your budget, but there's also some other things that you should be looking at as well when picking a child care center.
Well, let's dig into those things. If you could talk about kind of the basics that you look for in a quality child care center, and then you can just keep talking about some of the questions you think are important for them to ask, and I'll jump in as I see fit.
Sure. So some of the basic things is when you're going into a child care center, the number one thing you want to look for is cleanliness. So, are the floors clean? Are the tables clean? Do they have a sanitation kit readily, in the room? If they have a sink, are the kids utilizing it to wash their hands? Is there anything left, in the sink? Are there any kind of, food or things like that are caked into the floor, or you see that are on the surface of a toy or a shelf or anything like that. So the basic thing is you're gonna want to look at is cleanliness, and if the teacher is doing a 3-step process to clean. So usually you'll see 3 three spray bottles that want to have, water in it, want to have soap in it, want to have bleach in it. And they're supposed to be doing a 3-step process whenever they sanitize or clean a surface. So the first thing you want to look at is, cleanliness, because that's the, basic thing. You want your child to be in an environment where they can explore and everything's being clean. Especially when you're in a baby room, you really want to watch and look and see if they have a dirty toy bin. So for that infant toddler stage, they put everything in their mouth. That's how they learn. They're supposed to do that. But you don't want your baby putting one toy in their mouth and then another baby coming and picking up the same toy and putting it in their mouth. So it's really important that they have a dirty toy bin. So as soon as the toy goes into a kid's mouth, it's supposed to go in a dirty toy bin so they can properly sanitize and then put back out, for general use. So making sure cleanliness is really, a big one. And looking at how they store their toys. Isn't it inviting environment to kids based on the age group? So for an infant toddler room, you're going to be looking for toys to be on the ground. You're going to be looking for them to have shelving that is easily accessible to a baby, whether they're crawling or whether they're walking, whether they're in a kneeling state. All of the toys should be in a low setting so that they're easily accessible to kids. So if you walk into like an infant room and they have shelving where kids cannot reach it, that's a red flag right there. And making sure they have appropriate space for your child to be able to do that tummy time and to begin that crawling stage. You're looking for mats on the floor or some kind of designated area in the room where babies are able, to crawl. You're going to also want to see what kind of toys they have. Are the toys appropriate for the age? Are you in, a pre-K room and you're seeing rattles and things like that? You shouldn't see any of those things. You should see designated play areas, like there should be a sensory area and an art area and a dramatic play area. You should readily be able to see and label kind of those areas within, a classroom. One of the things that I always like to ask every teacher, regardless of what, age classroom they are, is, so what is your policy on discipline? How do you discipline, kids in your class? For one, if they're giving you disciplinary rules in an infant toddler classroom, that's a red flag. Because those babies are just exploring their environment. They're learning how to walk, crawl. So the key words that they should be looking in that age group is not so much discipline, but more as redirect. How do you redirect a baby when they're doing something, unwanted? Or how do you teach a baby to share or things like that? So it's more of redirection, sharing, and exploring in that infant toddler age. In that older kind of 2 and 3s, you are going to ask, how do you discipline kids in your classroom? And what you're going to look for them to say is, oh, we, redirect them through, common language. We use respectful language with them. And keywords you're looking for too, we partner with our kids in problem solving throughout the day. So that's when the teacher is going to prompt the child, especially like maybe if they're having a disagreement with their friend, the teacher's going to prompt the child and say, well, how do you think that made Tommy feel? Let's go talk to him. Tell him that you're sad and tell him why, and so they're prompting them to explore their language, explore their feelings or their thoughts, and to say, hey, I didn't like that. Next time, can you blah, blah, blah. So that's the kind of things that you're wanting to hear from them say. If they say, oh, we just split them up or we do timeout or that's not something that you should be hearing in a childcare setting that is a learning environment for your child. Another key thing is you want to watch and say, what is your daily schedule like? If they don't have a daily schedule for their classroom, that's kind of a red flag too. So you're looking for an early learning center that's going to teach your child and help your child with the social emotional, stages, getting to know and be in a classroom environment, learn to take direction and instruction from someone other than you. Those are all key things that kids need to be working on before they get to that kindergarten level. So if they tell you that they really don't have a schedule, that's kind of a red flag. With those kind of pre-K classrooms, they should be doing group times. They should have designated free play time, nap times, lunches, snacks, bathroom times. They should have a schedule. So if they don't, that's a red flag. That's usually a center where they're more of a, I'm going to watch your child and keep your child safe, and not necessarily I'm providing an enriching learning environment. I'm interested in what your child wants to know, and I have things to teach your child. Usually in a center like that, they're not going to say, oh, well, we're just here and, oh, he had a good day. Another red flag too is when if you're going to pick up your child and they can't tell you anything about what your child did that day. So if they're just giving you a general, oh, he had a good day, that's not telling me what my child did. A lot of times with childcare centers, they'll give you a parent communication sheet that kind of tells you what they ate, the activities that they engaged in that day. So that you're kind of getting a real rounded view of, oh, my kid was here for 6 hours or 8 hours, and this is all the things that they did that day.
Yeah.
So asking them, how would you communicate with me as a parent? So do they have a communication sheet that they're going to be giving you every day? Or some daycares will do pictures. Some of the daycares have like online systems where teachers can snap pictures of the kids throughout the day and they'll send them to the parent's phone. So an important question would be, how would you communicate with me as a parent? So making sure that the lines of communication are open too. Also asking them, what is the whole center schedule as a whole? Because you want to make sure that it's going to be an adequate schedule for you. If you're a working parent or a part-time parent, all of the centers have different kind of holiday schedules, days that they're going to be off. So you need to make sure that schedule is going to be compatible with your schedule. Another thing that I would also look for is teacher education. So if I'm handing you off my infant that I know is not going to be able to talk or relay any information with me, what kind of educational background do you have to work with this particular age group? So you're looking for them to say, oh, I have, my CDA, or, I have a bachelor's in early childhood education. Or how much experience do you have with this age group? I know me personally, a daycare that I chose not to send my son to was a daycare where I was talking to an infant teacher, and I'm like, oh, how long have you been working with this age group? And she's like, oh, I've only been in here for 6 months, but I've been in early childcare for, about 8 years. But she's used to working with 3 to 5-year-olds. Working with my son at that age, I think he was about 6 months, that's completely, different. So me as a parent, I wasn't so sure of her taking my 10th month old when you're usually, used to working with kids that walk and talk and are potty trained. So that's another thing that you want to look at. What is the teacher's experience in that particular age group that she's working in? Because a lot of times you will find early child care providers that have been in the field for a really long time, but sometimes they're used to only working with a particular age group. So it just depends on your comfort level as to, how old your child is and whether you're comfortable with their years of experience. Sometimes they have lots of experience and sometimes they might be new to the field. And just because they're new to the field doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, because a lot of times teachers are still in CDA or educational classes. So that could be a real benefit because it means they have a new, fresh set of eyes. They have new ideas coming into the classroom. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of times they come with a lot of new, cool ideas. So
wow, I don't think I would have thought about any of those basic kinds of things. This is embarrassing, but I don't think I'd have thought about cleanliness, and that's clearly so important, especially when you know how rampant things are spread around in childcare centers. Are there standards that childcare centers are held to, or do they go through licensing, or can you tell if somebody's been licensed or accredited?
Yes. So when you're going into a childcare center as a parent, you should be able to know whether they're accredited or not. That is something that they usually will have displayed in the common area right when you walk in. But if it's not, it's something that you could absolutely ask. Along with being accredited, there are certain standards that they are supposed to be upheld to as far as like temperature of food, where it's stored, cleanliness, that 3-step process, how do you sanitize toys. They should have a health and safety protocol, whereas, if your child comes in and has these symptoms and we're going to call you and you have to come pick them up and they have to be out for, it's usually 24 hours depending on what the symptom is, especially any kind of sicknesses or things. They should have a protocol for that. So when they're licensed, when they're accredited and licensed, they have a set of standards that they have to be upheld to. The state comes and they do, they have to go through a whole licensing evaluation. They have to be recertified in that. So that is something that you would want to look at as well. Some
So is
of
that
the home
important to be
daycares, the
licensed?
licensing for that is a little bit different. But home daycares and things can still be licensed. You want to look at the ratio of kids in the classroom. If they are licensed, they have to uphold the state ratios. And those ratios are just dependent on the age group of the kids. So for like infants, one teacher shouldn't have any more than 4 infants. So that's something that you are going to want to know depending on the age of your child. The older the kids get, the more the ratio changes. So the more kids you can have, the older they get. I would also look at too, as far as how much does the daycare cost? Just right off the bat, infants are the most expensive because they require the most care. So as your child gets older, the rates will decrease a little bit. But you also want to see, will they take state subsidy? Will they take the state voucher? Some daycares do, some daycares don't. Some daycares that don't usually have some kind of scholarship program. So what are the qualifications for that scholarship program, and do you qualify? So those are all different things that I would be asking for a child care center. And also when you're looking at child care center, you want to also ask, what community organizations do you partner with? So they should be saying, we have kids that get services from First Steps. We have kids that get services maybe from an outpatient, OT or PT, or, oh yes, we welcome outside, occupational therapy or speech language pathologists to partner, with us in servicing our kids. Do they have any kind of community organizations that are coming in and providing a service to them, like Ready Readers or any kind of, I know my son's daycare, every Wednesday they had a music therapist come in, and she did music and passed out instruments to everybody. So what other than just the basic childcare needs, what else are they providing for your child, whether it be music or art, art program, or any kind of extras? Like what else do you guys do to provide a well-rounded program? I know a daycare has like a Spanish teacher that comes into their pre-K room and teaches, the kids words in Spanish. So you want to look for those other opportunities, like what are they doing to create a whole well-rounded environment for the child care center.
Cool. I love the idea of Spanish and music therapy. That's where I would want to be for sure.
Oh yeah, my son they did yoga classes with my son one time. So he was like, Mom, let me show you this pose. Like every day he was coming home and showing me another pose, a yoga pose. So I thought that was so cool that they incorporated that.
We do have a question about, is there any kind of registry where you can look to see if there are complaints about a child care center? Is there anywhere that keeps records about that?
So you can go on, it's the state website that has all of like the licensed centers. Like you can go and look up the daycare and see if they've been had any complaints. Childcare Aware is a great database to use because it has most of the centers in the St. Louis County and city areas. So you can kind of type in your address and see what child cares are in your vicinity. Sometimes they'll have some ratings on there, and sometimes they won't. But where you really will find any kind of stuff on a daycare would be the state website for all the registered licensed centers.
And who does that go? What department does that go through?
That is the Department of Family Services.
Okay.
It's under them, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So my kiddo struggles with transition. Let's just say I know that they're going to really have a hard time. Do you have suggestions for me as a parent as to how to prepare them to go to childcare, or maybe to transition them in a little bit more gently?
Yeah, so if your child is just first coming into childcare and you've already picked a childcare that you know that you want them to go to, I would partner with that childcare center in doing some physics. So for like the first 3 visits, you're not going to leave. So you're going to be right in there with your child in that classroom, letting them get the sights and the sounds and the new faces of the center, getting used to the schedule with you. So I would do a couple of visits like that. Then I would do a couple of visits where maybe you're not in the classroom, but you haven't left the facility, but you're just not directly in the classroom, to transition them to being in the classroom, but then still having you kind of arm's length away, and then transitioning, to after those days into you being gone actually out of the facility. I'm a big thing on being visual. Kids learn through their senses. So even if before those visits, if you wanted to go take pictures or even bring up the facility on your computer so they can get kind of a visual of what it looks like, if they have pictures of kids playing in the particular classroom that they're going to be in, just kind of preparing them as much as possible for the actual visit of going to see it. If your child has never been away from you, I would do that prior. Maybe if it's a visit, you go 2 hours and they spend time with grandma and grandpa, just somebody other than yourself, so that they can just get used to transitioning away from you in general, is going to be easier for them to transition away from you at a childcare setting. Because most kids transition well, but it does take a couple minutes for them to fully transition. So expect them to have some tears the first couple of weeks, not days, but first couple of weeks of going into a childcare center, especially if they haven't been to any kind of childcare facility, if they've been staying home with you. Just know that there are going to be tears that first couple of weeks. But they will learn to transition. So if your kid is having some tears during drop off, during pickup, I would be asking the teacher, okay, so he was tearful during drop off. How long did that last? Was he able to self-soothe himself within 10 to 15 minutes? Then that's fine. That's age appropriate, especially, if they're in that 3 to 5 period. It could be a little bit longer for a baby, but asking them how long it took for them to kind of acclimate themselves into the classroom, to self-soothe, and then you kind of work from there. A lot of the kids that are smaller, that toddler infant stage, it's good to have a transitional object with them. I always tell parents, if you have a blanket or a lovey, if you can kind of wear that lovey for the 12 hours or 6 hours before you take them, so that you need to wear it long enough to get your scent on it. So then when you're handing them off to someone, they still have your scent. It's calming, it's soothing, it's a scent that is familiar, and it helps them calm more. it calmed more readily down. I did it a lot too with babies that I worked with in the hospital when they had to have an extended stay and mom and dad, maybe it's a NICU and mom and dad couldn't stay over. We always encouraged them to bring some article that had their scent on it that was soothing to the baby, because even prenatally, a baby knows the smell of their mom. So anything that has mom or dad scent on it is always going to be comforting.
What a great suggestion. I love that. So you talked a little bit about kind of getting a sense for how people handle behavioral kinds of things and discipline in the school setting. What about if your child has special health care needs? That seems like a tricky thing to navigate because we want kids to be in inclusive community spaces. What are some things that parents can expect, or how can they build that opportunity with a good quality childcare center?
Right, so that's a great question. So first of all, you want to make sure that all the staff that is going to be working with your child is CPR and first aid certified. Then that is a conversation that you're going to talk with the director, because the director is going to know the strengths and weaknesses of her staff. And it just depends on the child care center. So you would start with the director and having the conversation. A lot of daycares are very accommodating to kids' different medical conditions. So, but it is something that you definitely want to talk with them firsthand about, whether your kid has a gluten allergy or they have asthma or they have some allergy that requires an EpiPen. You would need to tell them that in that forefront conversation, so that if that teacher is maybe unfamiliar with the EpiPen, that she gets that training on that EpiPen and knows the pre-warning signs of using it and all of that prior to your child coming into their classroom. So a lot of times if there's additional information or something that's needed, then that gives that director time to work with that particular teacher on making sure that she's comfortable with whatever she's going to be asked to do, and two, if she wants to get more information on it, more training on it, anything like that, that you're allowing them that time to do that. So most times centers are very accommodating, even if maybe it's not necessarily a medical condition, but maybe it's a dietary condition, like your child can't have gluten, or they don't eat, red meat, or you're a vegan. Most daycares will work with you with that. Either they'll provide you the menu and they'll tell you, to circle everything that your child can eat on it. They'll give you the menus ahead of time and you can kind of decide what you want your child to eat. And then you can also supplement whatever. Usually they'll let you supplement something. So like maybe that day they're, having something that your child can't have. Your child can't have like that main protein or whatever, but he can have all the sides. So usually they let you supplement that protein from something at home.
Okay.
So just being able to like communicate that. We've got kids in some of the daycares that I see now that, have asthma. So the teacher has been trained on how to give albuterol, treatment, or, breathing treatment. So most daycares are very accommodating as long as you tell them on the front end of, what that specialized attention is going to look like.
Same things for like physical disabilities. If my kiddo has leg braces or uses a wheelchair or all of those kinds of things, is that sort of a commonplace situation where a director would sit with you and learn kind of the ins and outs of the equipment your child uses?
Absolutely. So if that daycare is promoting an inclusive environment, that director is going to sit down with you and make sure that she is going to be able to accommodate your child's specialized needs. So whether it be you guys touring the classroom and seeing, okay, how can we restructure this classroom so that some of these access points in this, classroom are wheelchair accessible? Or, let's talk about if he has a leg brace, how would he maneuver from point A to point B in the classroom? And is there a chair that is more suitable for him that we would be able to order, or we can get from another classroom, or, out of another part of the, daycare that we can bring in here for him to use until he gets out of the cast. Or I've had kids that have I've been working with some kids that have a diagnosis of, Down syndrome, and we're working on feeding. So he had a special spoon. Excuse me. He didn't eat with a regular spoon. He ate with a spoon that had a connector to it. So his spoon was like L-shaped with the spoon on, the other end. So like, how, do you guys have adaptive equipment? Do you have things in your budget to accommodate an inclusive environment, or is it something that they would be asking the parent to provide? So that would be a question that I would be asking in one of those
all right, I gotta
tours.
ask you, this is a hard end of the session question, but I know you're up for it. You've used the phrase, are they trying to have an inclusive environment? And I think that's a big question mark in some families' minds as to whether their kids are going to be welcomed in a neighborhood childcare center. Can you talk a little bit about the St. Louis ARC and kind of what our role is in supporting childcare centers, what you'd like to see for childcare centers that want to be inclusive but maybe need a little bit of support?
Absolutely. So we always are promoters of an inclusive environment, and that's where everybody in the child care center, regardless of their disability or delay, is included in every aspect of that classroom in that learning. So our early learning specialists are a big part of pushing our inclusion mission, because we go into the classroom, we work with the teachers and the directors on kids that learn a little bit differently, have a delay, or have a disability, and making sure that those kids are included in every aspect of the classroom, and actually giving the teacher some support on ways to support them inside the classroom. I feel like if you're in the early learning or early education environment, you need to be pushing inclusion. You need to be making sure that there are equal rights and supports for learning for all kids, regardless of how they learn or the way they learn or the way that they look. So if you are going to be looking at an early childhood center, you're going to be wanting to look at the kids that are, in that classroom already, and do they look different? Everybody learns differently, and how inviting are they for kids that learn a little bit differently or have a disability or developmental delay? Because as a child, kids don't care. Kids don't care if they're different from everyone else. They just want to play and learn and figure out the world around them. They could care less about disabilities or delays. So adults are usually the ones that get hung up on that. But we are here to help kind of advocate for those kids to have every opportunity that a typical developing child would be. So our early learning model really partners and helps childcares that are interested in becoming more inclusive. It helps them with that mission with our early learning specialists, so that when they do have a parent that comes in that's like, hey, my child, learns a little differently, those directors that we work with right now, we're like, yes, we can support you. We have specialized help that's going to help our teachers make your child a part of our center in the classrooms, and make sure that they are included in everything, and that they feel that they are in a supportive, loving environment.
What more is there to say? That was perfect. Thank you. That really answers so many questions for me, and hopefully it does for everybody in our audience as well. Is there anything else you want to close out with, Dana, that I haven't asked you?
No, just know that if you are looking for a childcare center, you are not alone with having some anxieties and fears. I think every parent has that at some aspect. So just know that you're not alone. And if you need any support in that area, we are happy to help you along that journey.
Fabulous. Yes, please reach out to us either through our family navigators, or you can talk to Dana about childcare, but we are here and would love to talk to you.